I think I'd like to turn our attention to the Endangered Species Act. We've recently seen an issue with the desert tortoise and cattle in Nevada that turned into a real debacle. We've seen issues with grazing allotments. There's an issue going on with sheep and the bighorn up in Idaho right now, and that's caused a reduction of 70% because of a potentially threatened species. Sage-grouse looms in Utah. Is there something wrong with the law?
Yeah, because the only place the sage-grouse should be listed is on the menu of a French bistro. It doesn't need to be federally protected.
There are people that are just... that was an email starter. I'm going to hear some of that, but go on.
I'll probably get some emails too. But most Utahns, I think, agree with me. Look, there are fundamental problems with the law. One is they don't take into account these animals that are living on private property. A lot of these animals are much like humans. They actually like to live where there's water and sprinklers and abundance of water. So if you look at some of the problems that we're having with sage-grouse and groundhogs and those types of things, you got to look at where the sprinklers are, and you're going to find where the animals are. And so, for instance, in San Juan County, where they are coming out preliminarily saying with the sage-grouse that 90%, roughly 90% of the private property will now be encompassed if they were to list the sage-grouse. I mean, that's just untenable. It's just not workable. They have done assessments on various species out there and not allowed the public to see that information. We had a hearing just a couple weeks ago, and that's where I was grilling the head of one of these departments and agencies to say, why don't you make that information public? He agreed that it was paid for with taxpayer dollars, then we should be able to see that information. It's just, the law goes too far. It's part of the Democrats' agenda. I know that's the tool that they use in order to prohibit development, but it just goes too far. It's just, when you live under that constant threat, particularly in rural communities, it's just fundamentally not fair.
Practically, is the best shot a tune-up to the law or is a repeal possible?
Well, one of the things that's been terribly frustrating is that the law has not been authorized for a number of years, yet it continues to get appropriated and funded. So a lot of people, including myself, and I'm in Congress, don't understand why that has not been reauthorized, but money continues to be appropriated. And it's devastating into the West and particularly the Rocky Mountain region. And every time I go and to have a town hall meeting, people rightfully talk about how devastating this is. There were adjustments for the wolf up north, but I wish they had taken that delisting of the wolf throughout Utah, because I worry that the wolves are going to make themselves available. They're going to start coming south, and suddenly we're going to wake up to devastation of herds on, our elk and our deer, our sheep, our cattle. We're 80% Utah. We're 80% livestock.
That's one of the interesting cases, because I looked at what they're doing with the sheep, and they're pulling them off of the ranges up in Idaho with the bighorn sheep. They say, well, they're making the wild sheep diseased and they're dying, and they go through all the other things that they list. They don't list the wolf, but the decline in the population has paralleled the wolf re-entrance into that community.
Wildlife needs to be managed, but it needs to be managed at the state level. And what I worry about is there's an agenda by some to manage species and wildlife at the federal level. That is not where the rubber meets the road. That is not the direction we can ever let that go. Let the state develop these management plans for the wildlife. We can balance all of the different needs, because you can't have a wolf get too out of control at the cost and the devastation of your elk herds. You can't allow the abundance of deer. Manage them at the local level. That's what the hunts are all about. One of the things that maybe if people aren't involved in the hunting industry, my guess is a lot of people who watch the show are, but what I find is that hunters and farmers and outdoor recreationists, they care more about the environment. They want healthy herds. They want a good ecosystem more than anybody. They've invested in this. Let them be part of that process, not some bureaucrat who's sitting in Washington, D.C. that thinks, wow, that sage-grouse is beautiful, we need more of them. It's just not right.
Congressman, thank you for your time today.
Hey,
appreciate it very much.
Hey,
I know your schedule's busy. We thank you for inviting us into your home.